Thank you all very much for coming out. Unfortunately, we did not have the rain and the snow and the sleet that they were predicting. What we want to do today, we have some folks on the panel who know a lot about local issues, and we want to hear from you. There's a lot that is going on with regard to seniors and a lot that's going on in the country in general. And let me just say a few words and I'm going to give it over to our panelists. And I'm delighted that we have with us Meg Burmeister, who's with the Northeast Kingdom Council on Aging, Dennis Labounty, who's with the Vermont Alliance for Retired Americans, and Marichelle Vaught, is that how you pronounce it? Who's with the COVE program, Community of Vermont Elders, and they will talk about some of the issues that they deal with every day. Let me just give you a little bit of an overview of what's going on in Washington, of which, needless to say, there is a lot. What do the Chinese say? That may you live in interesting times. We are living in interesting times, I think we can say that. The issue of what's going on in Washington right now is, I think we have a president and a Congress who are way, way, way out of touch with where ordinary Americans are. In the last year, we have had to deal with some awful, awful legislation. We have had to deal on 5 separate occasions with health care proposals which would have thrown up to 32 million Americans off of the health insurance they have. Now, can you imagine that in the year 2018, people are talking about throwing tens of millions of Americans off of the health care they have without any significant replacement for that loss? We had to deal with a tax bill which at the end of 10 years, and it was passed, at the end of 10 years will provide 83% of the benefits to the top 1%. In the midst of massive income and wealth inequality, when so many people in our country are struggling economically, they're working for $9, $10 an hour, older workers have nothing in the bank, people in Vermont around the country working for 2 or 3 jobs to pay the bills, 83% of the benefits go to the top 1% at the end of 10 years, and the deficit goes up by $1.4 trillion. And as part of that effort to give tax breaks to the very wealthy and large corporations, the next thing that these proponents do is to say, my goodness, the deficit is going up, and we're going to have to cut programs in order to help us with the deficit. So we had a Trump budget which proposed $1 trillion over a 10-year period in cuts in Medicaid. You know what that means? $1 trillion, 10 years, Medicaid. Now that's not just health care for the Dr. Dinosaur program in Vermont. It's not just health care for lower income people. It is nursing home care as well. When people go into nursing homes, more often than not, that bill is paid by Medicaid. And if you make a $1 trillion cut, you're going to make it very difficult for folks to get the nursing home care they need, or you're going to put that burden on their kids who are often struggling to raise their own children. Not only was the Trump budget, did it have a $1 trillion cut in Medicaid, it had a $500 billion cut in Medicare. It had significant cuts to Social Security disability. That was the bad news. The good news is that we defeated all of those proposals. They went nowhere. And in fact, on top of those cuts, there was an effort to do away with the LIHEAP program entirely, make massive cuts in education and so forth. What did not get a lot of attention is that, in fact, the budget that ended up being passed for a variety of reasons turned out to be one of the strongest budgets in the last 7 or 8 years. One of the areas that I work in, I'm a member of the Democratic leadership, which kind of gives me a little bit of an inside ability to shape things. And working with a number of other people, I focused on 4 or 5 issues. Number one, what I have heard from my own office here in Vermont is that it is very hard when people call up about Social Security issues, about disability issues, or about getting a response in a timely manner from Social Security, because Social Security Administration has been underfunded for many years, and there are many vacancies. They cannot provide the services that seniors and people with disabilities require. What we managed to do is, after years and years of no increase in funding, which means a decrease because of inflationary costs, we managed to increase funding for the Social Security Administration by $480 million. That's a big deal. Second thing that we did is I worry very much about the Veterans Administration, and we can talk about VA. We have worked very, very hard over the last many years to expand VA healthcare, including a community-based outreach clinic here in Newport, and to strengthen White River Junction. We managed to get $2 billion for infrastructure improvements in the VA. We were dealing with an issue of student debt for young people. A lot of kids are coming out of school deeply in debt. We managed to get some $300 million to begin the process of helping people with student debt. We got some money for rural infrastructure and a lot of other things. In fact, it was the strongest budget that hasn't been passed in recent years. Now, one of the issues you're going to hear a lot about is that as a result of the massive tax breaks to the wealthy, there are folks who think that the way to balance the budget is to make cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And in my view, we have got to do everything that we can to oppose those cuts, which will hurt so many people. So our job is to strengthen those programs, not to cut those programs. And one of the things that I have proposed in terms of Social Security is to do away with the limitation on taxes for wealthy people into the Social Security fund. Right now, if you make, I think it's about $125,000, you pay the same amount into the Social Security Trust Fund as somebody who makes $5 or $10 million. There's a cap. Doing away with the cap would allow us, starting at $250,000, to extend the life of Social Security for 60 years, and increase Social Security benefits for lower income seniors. Now, the truth is that in Vermont and all across this country, and honestly, I don't know how people do it, there are folks who are trying to get by on $12,000 or $13,000 a year. Now, how do you do that? Maybe we can talk about it, but there are people who literally are put in that position. So I want to, as quickly as we can, expand benefits for lower income seniors to make sure that we don't have any older people in this country living in desperate poverty. Second issue that is out there is the issue of prescription drugs. We have in this city, in this country, an unprecedented situation. And that is, the pharmaceutical industry is so enormously powerful that you could not believe it. The result is that in the last year, the largest drug companies in this country, largest 5 drug companies, made $50 billion in profit. While at the same time, 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford to fill the prescriptions their doctors prescribe, and you have elderly people in this state cutting their pills in half because they can't afford the medicine that they need. over the last 20 years, the drug companies have spent billions of dollars, not hundreds of millions, billions of dollars on lobbying and on campaign contributions to create the situation which exists today, which is they can do virtually anything they want. So if you are on a medicine right now, and you've been on that medicine for 20 years, you can walk into your pharmacy tomorrow and the pharmacist can tell you, I'm sorry that the price of that medicine has doubled or tripled. And in fact, in recent years, we have seen a significant increase in the prices of the drugs that many seniors are using. Since 2014, the cost of 60 drugs commonly taken by older Americans has more than doubled, and 20 of them have at least quadrupled in price. Why is that? And the answer is pretty simple. The drug companies today can do virtually anything they want for any reason. They can get as much as the market will bear. So if they can get away with doubling drug prices, tripling, they can do that, and they are doing it. And we are working very hard. I've been in the leadership of trying to take these guys on. It's not easy. But we are trying to do at least two things. Now, some of you may remember, I don't know if you do or not, a long time ago when I was in the House, I was the first member of Congress to take people in his own state across the Canadian border. We went to Montreal. We did, well, I don't know if anybody in Orleans County was there. We did mostly with folks in Franklin County. And these were, at that time, women who were struggling with breast cancer, working class women. Took a busload of them over, and it's a day that I will never forget as long as I live. These are people fighting for their lives who do not have a lot of money. We walked into Montreal, we had prearranged this whole thing. They went into a pharmacy, and they were able to buy the medicine that they needed for 1/10 of the price, 10% of the price they were paying in the state of Vermont or in America. And it turns out that it is still true today, as many of you know, that the prices for a variety of medicines in Canada far cheaper than in the United States. And guess what? Canada has the second highest prices for prescription drugs. They're a lot cheaper than we are. They have the second highest prices, much higher than many European countries, Australia or New Zealand, etc. So, first issue that we are raising, and is beginning to happen, is why is it that in America we pay so much more for the same exact medicine as they do over there? How does that happen? And the answer is that in Canada they have a process which determines what the companies can charge, and it is not just anything the companies will bear. And again, their prices are the second highest in the world. So one remedy is to say that pharmacists and prescription drug distributors and individuals should be able to purchase medicine from Canada and any other country where prices are lower and that the product is FDA approved. Okay, that alone would substantially lower the cost of medicine in this country. If your pharmacist can purchase medicine that is sold at 50% of the cost in Canada, we would lower prescription drug prices significantly. Second issue is right now we have a weird, totally weird pricing system for drugs in this country. The Veterans Administration negotiates prices. The Veterans Administration obviously spends a lot of money on prescription drugs for veterans. They negotiate prices with the drug companies based on a law that was passed a long, long time ago. So the prices that they pay for a product is much, much, much lower than what you will pay for the same prescription drugs, lower than Medicare, lower than Medicare. So what we are saying now is that Medicare should be able to negotiate prices with the drug companies, bring the prices way, way down as well. There are other things that we can do. But the bottom line is, I remember a few years ago talking to a doctor in Underhill, a family practitioner, and she said to me, Bernie, for every prescription drug that I write, 1 out of 4 people cannot afford to buy the medicine that I prescribe. Now, how stupid is it that doctors are providing prescriptions for medicine and people can't even afford to fill that prescription, can't afford it. So we have a lot of work to do in that area as well. Last point that I make, and I'm going to give it over to our panelists, is the overview in Washington is that you have an institution now that is very significantly controlled by lobbyists and wealthy campaign contributors. So on almost every major issue that you can think of, the American people are on one side, and Washington, or at least congressional leadership, is on the other side. Give you some examples. Congress, under Republican leadership, wanted to throw 30 million people off of the health care they had. How many people in America do you think believe that that made any sense at all? And the answer is very few. On the other hand now, a majority of Americans want to pass legislation that I introduced called Medicare for All, so that the United States would join every other major country and guarantee health care to all people. All right? So, Republican position, throw 30 million people off of health insurance. My view, supported by many in Congress now, guarantee health care to all people as a right. The American people, in overwhelming numbers, much more strongly support that point of view than what Republicans are trying to do. How many Americans do you think believe that we should give massive tax breaks to the top 1% and to large profitable corporations, and then at the same time come back and cut Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security? Not many. But that is the agenda that we are seeing now in Washington. How many people think we should spend $165 billion more in 2 years for the military, and then do away with the Wheels on Meals program, or cut the Meals on Wheels program? Not too many people think that. So our job right now, from a political point of view, is to rally the American people, get them involved in the political process, and demand that they have a government which represents them and not just wealthy campaign contributors. So, what I'd like to do now is introduce our panelists, and then when they're finished, we're happy to take any questions or comments that you have. And one of the things that I would appreciate is, obviously we'll take any questions that people have. Talk about what you are seeing with your own eyes. Because one of the things that we don't do enough, there's a lot of pain out there, a lot of people who are hurting, and we don't hear about that very much. And we're not going to bring about change unless we talk about what is going on in the real world. All right, with that, let me introduce Meg Burmeister, who's with the Northeast Kingdom Council on Aging. Meg?
Thank you, everyone. As the Executive Director, I want to thank Senator Sanders for bringing us all together today. Luckily, we dodged the bullet on the storm, and so we're not in the middle of a snowy April day. There's no better way for us to stay informed than to come together in a Vermont-style town meeting, and this gives us the opportunity to get voices heard and to communicate about things that are troubling people and that people are struggling with. At the Council on Aging, we hear those things happen all the time. We continuously hear people calling, needing help with fuel assistance, having trouble making it through. This has been a very cold spring for people, so where they budgeted for fuel and thought they would make it through, they're struggling. People trying to get medications and being unable to afford them, and people struggling overall to make ends meet and stay in their homes in a state where we have a rather old housing stock. What we see for people is that they want to remain in their homes and in their communities. And when Senator Sanders talks about the Medicaid program, in the state of Vermont, what's unique about that is that that also takes the nursing home level of care that people need and allows people to stay in their homes under that Medicaid benefit also. So for many people, in the last 10 years, that statistic has changed from over 70% of people who needed care towards their older years going into nursing homes, and now that number is closer to 50% are in the community and 50% are using institutional care. So we're seeing a huge change in that, and we need to be able to support that. I want to thank Senator Sanders for the work on the budget. This is the first time in all the years that I can remember that we actually saw an increase that really helped the work that we can do. We've been struggling with how do you make ends meet with continual stable funding that stays the same while your costs are all going up, and you pinch and twist and do whatever you can to make it work for agencies to be able to provide the services, but it makes it very hard to do. And what we know is that it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, or how much money you have. When you have dementia or healthcare challenges, or you're just trying to get medications and understand the systems, we provide that work and help people make the connections that they need to get things. We, at the Council on Aging, provide support for all of the home delivered meals programs and the congregate meals programs. Here in Newport, we have the cornucopia program, which is a tremendous asset to this community and really has done a fine job in developing the Meals on Wheels program all over the place with many long driving routes to get there. With our community partners, what we've been starting to work more with is accountable health communities and trying to work with all of the different agencies to put our resources together so that we're helping people together and stop duplicating different services or quote-unquote silos where we all get kind of stuck doing our own thing and not working collaboratively. And that really has been a great movement here in the Northeast and in Newport in particular. We have a senior helpline, and we see roughly anywhere from 275 to 350 calls a month, and many times those are about health care, those are about medications and fuel, things that people are struggling with. So I just want to thank everybody for their support, and thank you, Senator, for bringing us together.
Thank you, Dave. Dennis Labonte is with the Vermont Alliance for Retired Americans. Dennis?
Thank you, Bernie, and thank everybody for coming today. My name is Dennis Labonte. I am with the Vermont Alliance of Retired Americans. The Vermont Alliance of Retired Americans is an affiliation of the national organization founded by the AFL-CIO in 2001. In 2004, the Vermont Alliance of Retired Americans was created. The Vermont ARA is made up of roughly 800 members of union and retirees like yours. We also organize and work with community-based groups, senior citizen groups, and individuals that are not affiliated with the union but share our pro-worker progressive values. Our mission is to ensure social and economic justice and full civil rights for all citizens so that they may enjoy lives of dignity and fulfillment in family security. And also a primary objective of the Vermont ARA is to enroll and mobilize retired union members as well as other senior community activists into a statewide grassroots movement advocating for a progressive political and social agenda, one that respects and strengthens families. The Vermont ARA strives to be a resource for our affiliates. We provide up-to-date information on issues of importance to seniors, healthcare, and social services. We advocate specifically for senior citizens. Vermont ARA efforts to make an impact on state and federal regulation is ongoing throughout the year. In addition to legislative visits, we also participate in letter writing, phone calling, press releases, and rallies. We also sponsor an annual conference on timely and acceptable issues. Just to give you an example of some of the Vermont Alliance of Retired Americans priorities in 2018, is as right now we have a bill in the Senate, which is S53, which would be support establishing a system of universal primary care, and we also have another bill which is H96, which would exempt state taxation on Social Security payments. A couple other things that we're working on right now is minimum wage and paid family leave. Many of people might not realize that, what does minimum wage really have to do with the seniors? Well, as many of you might be out there working a job so that you may be able to, pay your fuel because your Social Security isn't enough to sustain your living expenses. And so there are many seniors out there that are working part-time jobs. And as right now, the minimum wage is $10.50 an hour. Last year, we passed in the House, we passed in the Senate minimum wage, which would bring it to $15 an hour in 2024. And as it is right now, it sits in the House, and we're working on that in the last couple of weeks to try to get that passed to get onto the House floor. And hopefully we can arrange that. The other issue that we're working on is paid family leave. Paid family leave was passed in the House last year and is now in the Senate. And what that would allow individuals to do is this would put the word tax on employees. You would pay 1.1% of your wages. So if you're making $10.50 an hour, working 40 hours a week, you would pay 59 cents into this insurance, if you will, program. What the program would allow individuals to do is to go out, take care of a loved one that might be sick, take care of your child, their grandparents, and be able to get compensation for it. The compensation, as it is written right now, would allow 6 weeks per calendar year, and you can take them up in 2 days here, a week there. But the total is 6 weeks in the calendar year, but also it would compensate you 80% of whatever your wage earning is. So that is extremely helpful. You heard Senator Sanders talking about how a lot of people would like to be able to live at home, and especially if they're coming to the end of life, and this would be a good opportunity for individuals to be able to stay home with their parents. So I encourage you to call your state representatives and your state senators and ask them to pass these two bills. Just in closing, really quick now, there's a couple of movies on healthcare, and one of them is a 27-minute documentary, describes how the healthcare system in Canada and the United States evolved to be so complex, completely different, when at one point they were essentially the same. What we do is throughout the year, we go to senior centers and we talk to seniors like yourselves about the issues of the day. And we would encourage you to contact your senior centers to invite us to come to talk to you. We'd be more than happy to show these films or to talk to you about any other social issues. I have some pamphlets, and as you come in the front door, if you want to pick one up, you can join the Vermont ARA. It's $10 a year. We have a conference in October, as we do every October. Usually it's in the Barrie, Montpelier area. We bring in dignitaries such as Senator Sanders. We bring in people from Washington, D.C. That are on the top of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. And again, I really encourage you to be able to talk to your senior centers and ask them to invite us in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Our next panelist is Marichelle Watt with the Community of Vermont Elders, COVE.
Thank you. And thank you for Senator Sanders for this opportunity, and to Jessica Early for organizing these events. My name is Marichelle Vaught. I am a program director with the Community of Vermont Elders, also known as COVE. We're a nonprofit organization that began in 1981, and we provide advocacy and education for older Vermonters. Our offices are based in Berlin, but we serve statewide. and we advocate for the dignity, security, and well-being of older Vermonters. We have a policy advisory committee and activists who lobby on behalf of issues affecting elders in our state, and our top priorities include continuing funding for LIHEAP, so fuel assistance, long-term care, expansion of transportation services, especially for folks living out in remote areas who need to go see their medical professionals. Working on the protection against financial exploitation, funding for senior housing, funding for nutrition programs, healthcare reform, which includes efforts to stabilize the rising cost of prescription medication, and support for programs that provide socialization for older Vermonters. A list of these priorities with their details along with the coalition's Cove participates in is also available on the back table at the entranceway. We offer workshops on how to speak with your legislators and how to get your voice heard at the State House. We also have 2 programs that work toward the prevention of scams and fraud. The Senior Medicare Patrol offers a number of presentations on Medicare fraud. And the Building Bridges program that I direct, which is funded by the Victim of Crime Act, provides information on how to protect yourself from general scams, fraud, and financial exploitation. And we're seeing this rise in people who are losing their life savings to scams and fraud. We're collaborating with agencies and organizations who are already working on scam prevention so we don't reinvent the wheel. So we're working with the Department of Financial Regulation, the Attorney General's Office, 211, AARP, and we're working together on ways to streamline how to get the information to the public, how to make people more aware of the scams that are out there, and how to be more vigilant and protect your finances. And we want to encourage people who have been targeted or lost money to a scam or fraud to report that. And so we go around and we do presentations on how you can do that. So my contact information is also available in the back of the room, so if anybody is interested in more information on Cove or setting up an anti-fraud presentation at your local community center, please feel free to pick up my contact information. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Marshall. And let me also mention that if anybody here has any problems on any issue that you think we could help you with, Social Security, VA, Medicare, Medicaid, please do not hesitate to give us a ring. We have an 800 number, and we have staff members here. We'll be happy to take your name and number. We can get back to you next week. Okay, that's it from us. Let's hear from you. Anything that's on your mind? Who has the mic out there? We have a mic?
We do not have a mic, but Sheila
Okay.
can help assist if
Okay,
people
just
can't
stand up
project.
and be loud. The room is not that big. Ma'am?
Yes.
Just stand up if you could, please. Tell us who you are and what's on your mind.
Senator Sanders, I'm sure you had a restless night last night, so I'll make this as short as possible. Is there any way that Congress and the Senate, both houses, can regulate the prescription drug companies? Is there anything you can?
Of course they can. All right, everybody hear the question.
No.
Is there any way that Congress can regulate the prescription drug companies? And the answer is, of course. Every other country, do you think, if you go across the lake here, do you think that they can charge anything they want? No. What they do in Canada, each country does it a little bit differently, but they do in Canada, interestingly enough, is I think they look at the prices of a drug in terms of how it is, the cost of it in, I believe, 7 other countries. Okay, and they average it out, they say that's what it will be in Canada. Other countries are more aggressive. Canada, as I said, has the second highest prices in the world behind us. But there are, let me give you just a few examples while we're on the subject here. Nexium. All familiar with Nexium? Nexium for heartburn. In this country, it costs about $500. In Canada, it's $262. Okay? Gleevec, which is used to treat leukemia, costs over $10,000 in the United States. It costs $2,100 in Norway, 5 times differential. Lantus is a diabetes drug, costs $186 in America, $47 in France. Crestor is a popular drug for high cholesterol, costs $86 in the United States, $29 in Japan. Advair, used to treat asthma, costs $155 in the United States, $38 in Germany. And on and on and on it goes. These are just a handful of drugs. But all over the world, prices are low. And why is that? Because in every other major country, there exists national health care programs guaranteeing health care to all people. And all of those programs understand that to control cost, you have to negotiate prices with the drug companies. It is insane to believe that it makes any sense for the drug companies to be able to charge any price they want. So to answer your question, of course, there are many, many things that we can do. If we simply said, as I mentioned a moment ago, making sure that pharmacists here in the United States can buy medicine over there when it is substantially cheaper, it will lower costs. If we negotiate, if Medicare negotiates prices with the drug companies, it will substantially lower costs. So the high cost of prescription drugs is one of the most significant healthcare crises that we face. We have got to do everything we can to lower prices. What we're up against, as I mentioned, is a pharmaceutical industry that in the last 20 years has spent billions of dollars on lobbyists, on advertisements, on campaign contributions. And they are very determined to make sure that they can continue to rip off the American people. So this is, at the top of my list of issues that we have got to deal with, because people are dying. People are getting sicker than they should be. People are living, we just in Montpelier this morning, and a woman who had rheumatoid arthritis was talking about the stress that she has to go through trying to find medicine that's affordable for her. It goes on all over the country. It is a huge issue, and we are going to take these guys out, and we are going to beat them. Maybe not tomorrow, but the American people want us to stand up to them, and I intend to lead that effort.
Thank you.
Okay. Woman with the distinctive hair.
My husband,
Your name is?
Carolyn McCarthy.
Carol?
My husband was Raymond McCarthy. He died 3 years ago, but he was in Iraq and Iranian war, doing wills, doing everything for the boys at Fort Devens, all over Massachusetts. And he died, and I was supposed to get medicine free for life. Now they're throwing a $30 copay on every prescription I'm getting. Is that legal?
All right, where's my staff? What do we have here? Jessica? Okay, make sure you talk to Jessica before we're out of here.
Okay.
And Jessica will get back. You'll give her your phone number, and we will call you up. I mean, one of the things that's going on, we have folks in Congress now who want to cut Medicare, and if you cut Medicare, what are you going to do? You're going to force people to pay higher co-payments. And you got businesses all over the country where healthcare costs are going up, they're shifting more of it onto their workers. So this is a major problem. We will take a look at your case and we will get back to you. Sir.
Frank Davis, Derby Line. First of all, I want to thank you for the work you've done, especially for veterans. I'm a veteran. My father was a veteran, decorated and disabled in World War II, and the Veterans Administration was a lifeline for us, for my family. And I know that there is somebody in Washington, who shall remain nameless, who wants to privatize the VA, and I know your efforts to keep that from happening. I think the work you've done so far, making it convenient for veterans, is great. However, my personal topic right now is something else. I have 2 children who are in their 30s, who are shackled with student debt. And it is really keeping them from getting their lives started. And they are really having, they can't even negotiate lower rates, and the rates are practically usurious.
Yes.
So I
All right,
appreciate
Frank,
your
you touched on
comments.
2 issues that are dear to my heart. We've been working very, very hard on them. I want everybody here to understand. You know, some of you may think, oh, well, Bernie's exaggerating. He's being partisan, and like Donald Trump and all that stuff. Check it out. I mean, because what I'm telling you, sometimes what seems, if I say something to people, think it's too crazy to be even true. But in terms of this issue of privatization, how many people, be honest with me, how many people in this room have heard of a family called the Koch brothers, K-O-C-H? Good, very good. All right, this is what you don't know about the Koch brothers. What you see in the media is they will say that the Koch brothers are a very wealthy family, and they are. They're worth, I think, between 90 and 100 billion dollars. And you're going to hear that the Koch brothers are going to spend a lot of money supporting right-wing Republicans in the elections, and it's true. The Koch brothers and a few of their billionaire friends will be spending $400 million in the coming midterm elections. You got that? One family going to spend $400 million in the coming election with a few of their billionaire friends. But what you don't hear about is, what do these guys stand? Okay, they're very, very rich. They spend a lot of money to elect Republicans. Okay, big deal. What do they stand for? Who knows what they stand for? No, that's where they get their money. They're into fossil fuel, among other things. What do they want? Why are they spending so much money? What's their goal?
Greed and corruption.
Yeah, but more than that. Who knows? Yeah, back there. Yes, sir.
The end of liberal democracy, basically.
Yeah, something like that. Well, what does that mean? Okay, here we go. All right. Since the 1930s, for your parents or grandparents in the 1920s, the early part of this country, if you were old and you were sick, and you didn't have a lot of money, what happened to you?
Poor farm. Poor farm.
That's right. You may have gone to the poor farms, you may have been able to get some charity, or you died. The truth is, before Social Security, we forget about these things. We don't learn about them. Young people don't know it. Before we had Social Security, about half of the elderly people in this country lived in poverty. And before you had Medicare, passed in the 1960s under Lyndon Johnson, when people got old and sick, they were in desperate condition. So what has happened in this country over the last 70, 80 years is there was a transformation of government, starting with FDR in 1932. Basically, what that transformation was about, which said, Dennis raised the issue of the minimum wage. There was a time in America where an employer could pay a worker anything that employer wanted to pay. And people said, well, that's crazy. We cannot have people working for starvation wages. We need at least a minimum wage. And we established the minimum wage. Government said people can't work in factories where they're losing their fingers or their hands. We need certain safety regulations. Government said we can't have factories dumping crap into rivers and lakes or polluting the air where people are getting sick. We need to regulate the environment. We need to pass Social Security so that when people get old, at least they have some regular guaranteed source of income coming in. We need senior health care. We need health care for poor people called Medicaid, etc., etc. What the Koch brothers are about is a very right-wing ideology and philosophy, which basically says that government is bad and that we have to get government out of all of the aspects of our lives where progress has been made over the last 70 or 80 years. So they won't say this publicly, but in truth, they don't want to cut Social Security. They want to eliminate Social Security. They want to eliminate Medicare and Medicaid. They are saying their idea of freedom. See, they talk about freedom. So if you're old and you're sick, you will have the freedom to go to any private insurance company you want. And if you're old, you can get your retirement benefits from Wall Street or anybody else. But they do not want government playing a role in protecting the elderly, the children, the sick, the poor, or working families. That is their philosophy. And over the years, because they spend so much money and they're so powerful, they have think tanks. When you watch television, some economist gets up there and says, well, this is why I think tax breaks for billionaires are a good idea. You don't know that that economist works for a think tank funded by the Koch brothers. In fact, there are political scientists who will tell you what I believe is true. Democratic Party, very powerful. Republican Party, very powerful. The Koch brothers are even more powerful. They spend more money in politics than either the Democratic or Republican national committees will spend. And that is their ideology. So what you see when you see people in Congress, Republican leaders, Paul Ryan, saying we got to throw 30 million people off of health insurance, this is part of what the Koch brothers are about. They don't believe government should provide health insurance for anybody. We hear about people talking about privatizing Social Security. That's what we're talking about. So that takes us to the VA. Now, the VA is the largest integrated healthcare system in this country. I am not going to sit here and tell you that the VA is perfect. It is not. But I'm not going to tell you that any healthcare system or any hospital is perfect as well. I am the former chairman of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. So I have talked to all of the major veterans organizations, the American Legion, the DAV, the VFW, the Vietnam Vets, you name them. And what they will tell you is that once people get into the veterans healthcare system, by and large, they are very happy with the care they get. And one of the best medical centers in the country happens to be in White River Junction. And what we have done here in Vermont over the past few years is expand community-based outreach to Newport, to Brattleboro, as well. So we now have 5 community-based outreach clinics. So there are those people led by the Koch brothers who are saying, you got a $200 billion budget for the VA. Think about how much money private corporations can make out of that system if we privatize it. That's their goal. And I'm going to do everything that I can to prevent that from happening. Now, this guy, Dr. Shulkin, who you may remember, was fired by Trump a couple of weeks ago. That is exactly what the issue is. I disagreed with Shulkin on some things. But he was very clear. He did not want to move to privatize the VA the way the Trump administration did. And they got rid of him. They're bringing in a new guy. And I surely will not support this guy, who is Trump's personal physician, if he is going to be talking about privatization. Okay, now the second issue that you raised, another issue. Everybody here knows that we're living in a very competitive global economy. Everybody here knows that technology is changing our economy. 50 years ago in Newport, or Burlington, any place else, you had a high school degree, there was the likelihood you could go out and get a decent job. By and large, that reality has changed. And right now, you need post-high school education in order to get the good jobs that are out there. That is why I believe that we should make public colleges and universities tuition-free so that any young person in this country who has the ability and the desire should be able to get that college education regardless of the income of his or her family. And then the other issue is, because college is so expensive today, what Frank is saying is he has kids, and there are millions of them, who are leaving school $30,000, $40,000, $100,000 in debt. We have a dental crisis in Vermont and a dental crisis up here in the Northeast Kingdom. Do you know how much debt the average dentist leaves dental school with? Just had a meeting in Montpelier, met with some dentists from in Washington, from Vermont. Do you know what there's a dental school in Maine, which are doing a good job. Do you know what the average debt of people graduating that dental school is? $350,000. Now, if you graduate dental school, $350,000, you think you're going to set up a practice in downtown Newport? Yeah. You can't make enough money. So you're going to have to go to some urban area where you can charge people outrageous prices and make a fortune in order to pay back your debt. In fact, the woman that I was talking to, I think she's going to graduate $450,000. So this is totally insane. So what we are trying to do now is to, and we've worked, I won't go through all of these things, Frank, but we are working there are a number of programs that we're working on. At the very least, what we should do is allow people with student debt to be able to go shop around and get the lowest interest rates they can. Some of them are now stuck with interest rates of 6, 7, 8%, when they can get interest rates a lot lower than that. So there's a lot that has to be done. We put over $300 million into this budget to begin the process, just begin, it's a little bit of money, to help people struggling with those outrageous debts. But thank you for those very good questions. Okay, got a woman right here, ma'am.
I'm Elaine Lockwood. I'm president of Northeast Kingdom Home Care, and we also have the Adult Day Center here in town. There are a couple issues around that affect, in ways that the minimum wage increase are going to affect seniors. And in order to, because seniors, for the most part, are on a limited income, on a fixed income. When we raise wages, you know, our industry does not have these, certainly don't have these big margins where we can just pay out, you know, a huge amount more without having to pass that on to our clients. And that is going to create a hardship in a couple of ways. One of them is, of course, the prices go up. And there isn't, as far as I can see, any big federal program that's going to help seniors who aren't at the state where they have to go on Medicaid and lose their homes and all that stuff, but in fact are, you know, they can stay in their homes. We would like them to stay in their homes, but they just can't afford to pay for it. The second thing that's going on is that we have also a big labor shortage. And a lot of the people who are working, you know, we would think of them, you know, they're hardworking people, they'd like to work more, but they also need their medical care and their Medicaid benefit to take care, you know, of their own medical needs. So people are often, because they have some kind of disability or whatever, they're only willing to work a certain number of hours. And if we give them a raise, they turn it down because then they can't work more. They can't work as many hours, and they like what they do or they care about the people they're cared for. And so there's this benefits cliff where if we could get it so that people could work more but not lose their benefits or have their benefits shrink at such a slow pace that it's worth working more, then people would have a bigger labor force, which for everybody I know who's trying to hire people, not just in my industry, but everybody up here is having trouble hiring. It would solve a lot of problems for a lot of people.
You're absolutely right. And what Elaine is talking about not only applies to the home healthcare industry, it applies to a lot of other industries. For example, if you're a single mom and you're getting help with childcare right now, but you want to lose that, you don't. So what we have to do is encourage people to participate in the workforce when they're able to do that, and you don't do that by taking away benefits that will leave them worse off. Why would somebody go to work if they're going to be worse off without working? So you're right on that issue. In terms of the other issue, I think the problem that we have is, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, but wages in the home healthcare industry are pretty low, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
All right. So what we need to do is not prevent a raise in the minimum wage. I believe in that very strongly, but we need to help the home healthcare agencies so they can pay workers. You want to be able to pay workers a decent wage. You want to attract career people. You want to provide decent benefits, correct?
Yeah.
You're not able to do that now. All right? So the goal is not to prevent workers from getting a living wage. The goal is to make sure that you have the resources to pay them. Okay. Yes, right here.
Hey.
Turn around so everybody can hear.
Hi. My name's Colleen Cole. I'm from Morgan. And I just wanted to thank you because number one thing is I'm a breast cancer survivor. And this winter, our insurance got switched over. We got cut from Medicaid because my husband and I make $1,000 more a year over the allowed. But my point is that if I did not have that Medicaid when I went through my treatments and stuff, I probably wouldn't be here right now. So I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart, from my family, and from everybody that go through this all on a daily basis. Keep working what you're doing. It's amazing. So
thank you. Let me just... Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I know that that's not easy. You know, and I say this over and over again. This is the United States of America. This is the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Do you think that families like Colleen's should be put into a position of when a terrible illness strikes, not having the resources or the capability of addressing that issue. It is not what this country should be about. It is not what exists in our eyes viewed from here or in any other major country on earth. When you get, there is so much stress. One of the problems that we deal with in this country is stress. I can only imagine the stress that you went through, Colleen, yes?
I still do have side effects horribly from it.
All right.
So.
Think about the stress. It is one thing. I was up in Canada maybe 6 months ago. Jessica, you were there, I think. When were we there? 6 months ago?
October.
We went up there.
Yep.
And I talked to doctors and I talked to patients. And their system is not perfect. But when you talk to the patients, this is what, we were in a hospital room. And people, had just had surgery. And the person made the most basic point. The person said, look, I am dealing with a serious illness. I got enough to worry about. I don't want to have to worry about how I can pay the bills or what the cost will mean to the future of my family. And they don't have to worry about that. All right? They go to the hospital, it doesn't matter. They don't get any bills. All right? Go to the doctor, it doesn't matter. Do they pay for that in taxes? Yeah, they do. But that's what a civilized society is about. So in this country, we have got to, and I'm working on helping to lead this effort, make sure that healthcare is a right, Colleen. That means that you don't have to worry about it. Worry about your health. That's what you should worry about. Not worry about the finances associated with your care. And we are the only major country not to guarantee healthcare to all people. We spend far more per capita on healthcare than any other country. And it's not just that 30 million people have no health insurance. There are many more like Colleen's family and many of your families that are underinsured. Yes, that means high deductibles. It means high copayments. It means that millions of people who have insurance still don't go to the doctor because the copayment or the deductible is too high. We talk to people who have $5,000, $10,000 a year deductibles. How insane is that? What does that insurance mean? If you're a working family and you're making $40,000 a year and you got a deductible of $10,000, what does it mean? Who can afford to pay the money out of pocket? So people don't go to the doctor. And then they walk into the doctor says, why didn't you come in here 6 months ago? Your situation is much worse now. Well, doctor, I didn't have the money. Didn't have any insurance. It is totally dysfunctional and crazy. And I'm going to tell you one story here, and I'll end this one up. 3 years ago, I introduced a Medicare for all single-payer bill. When I introduced it, people said, Bernie, it's a crazy idea. No one's going to support it. When I ran for president on it, it's too radical an idea. Well, you know what? The last few polls have shown that a majority of the American people now support Medicare for all. All right, we made real progress on that. And we're going to continue the fight. When I introduced this bill 3 years ago, I had 0 co-sponsors in the Senate. Not one senator had the guts to co-sponsor a Medicare for all single-payer system. Today we have 16 co-sponsors. All right? So we're making progress on this issue, and the day is going to come when nobody in America will be in the position that Colleen was forced to be in. Okay, let me get to, yes, sir.
Brian McCrae at Newport. So ultimately, I think when you're looking at the control that the insurance companies and big pharma have over Congress, how do you get rid of Citizens United, and then how do you finance campaigns without having to make the call of shame, as you say in your book? How do you do it?
Good. All right, what Brian is talking about is maybe the most important issue. Healthcare, very important. Prescription drugs, very important. Social Security, very important. But underlying all of the attacks against the middle class in this country is a disastrous campaign finance system which has been made much worse as a result of Citizens United. By a 5-4 Supreme Court decision about 7 years ago, 5-4 decision, Supreme Court said that billionaires have the freedom of speech, the First Amendment rights, to spend as much money as they want on political campaigns. And that means that the Koch brothers and other billionaires are writing out checks as we speak to buy elections, all right? So we have got to overturn Citizens United. There's some legislation that can also mitigate some of its worst excesses. And the other thing we need to do is move toward public funding of elections, which exist in states like Maine and in New York City. Okay, other questions? Way in the back there, sir.
My name's Robert Owen, I'm from Derby. Basically this fall when they had the Schumer shutdown, Trump offered you guys a deal and you didn't want to do it. You wanted DACA to come through with nothing attached. So he didn't do that. As it went on a little later, you had another shutdown. Now we have a lot of federal employees around here. Every time you shut down, they don't get paid. But either way, you wouldn't do anything without DACA. Then all of a sudden, Trump tells you, oh, I'll give you 1.8 million people of DACA if you give me some common sense immigration reform. Now, you Democrats love common sense in everything. And you threw DACA right under the bus. DACA's dead. What's to say that when Trump offers you something like Social Security for something that's common sense, you don't throw all of us under the bus? Oh, and one last thing. On the medication, Congress outlawed Medicare negotiating with the drugs.
Right. That's exactly right. It was the Republican leadership that did that. But, Robert, you know, you raise a lot of issues, and I don't want to be sarcastic here. I think you don't have it exactly correct. The shutdown that took place was not led by Chuck Schumer. The shutdown was promoted by a president who, you recall, he said, I think a shutdown might be a good thing for the country. That's a rough quote from Donald Trump. This issue of DACA, in fact, Democrats and myself went a lot further than I felt comfortable going in terms of funding things like a wall, which I think makes no sense at all. But Trump, as he does all of the time, I know I'm not going to convince you of it, but you have a president who lies a whole lot of times. I just got to say that. I don't say that with any pride. George Bush, who I disagreed with, I would not tell you was a liar. This guy lies a lot. And this guy changes his mind every day. On one day he was sympathetic to the DACA kids, the next day he says it's all. Who precipitated the DACA crisis? Who did away with what the DACA rules that were established? That was the president. So, you know, I think you and I probably look at the world a little bit different, but I don't kind of accept the way you define the issue. Okay, let me get to, let's get everybody ask at least one question. I see a hand way in the back there. Yeah.
Welcome, Mr. Sanders. Can you address the homeless veteran situation? Because tonight there's, depending on whose statistics you go by, there's going to be anywhere from 125,000 to 250,000 vets sleeping on the streets tonight in America.
No. The answer is one homeless veteran is one homeless veteran too many.
Amen.
It is unacceptable. It's an area, in fact, where it becomes a little complicated. In fact, we have made some progress. There was a fellow named General Shinseki, when he came in, made homelessness of veterans. He came in to head the VA, his top priority. In fact, we made some progress. Where the problem becomes a little bit complicated, I'll give you an example, is often, not always, but often homelessness for veterans and for non-veterans is tied into alcohol problems, drug problems, mental illness problems. And I'll give you an example of something. There was, and then you have a conflict where you have some veterans homeless shelters. We have a very good one in Randolph, and one in Winooski. And they have principles which says that we don't want alcohol to be on the premises, okay? And I can understand that because the guys who are there are struggling, trying to stay sober, okay? So what do you do if you have a veteran who is alcoholic and wants to go into those facilities? The difficult choice that they have made is they won't accept them. But what do you do with that veteran? You got to deal with that veteran and find a place for that veteran. So that is what we're working on. But you're right, it is a serious problem. We've made some progress, not enough, and we have got to continue going forward so that no veteran in this country sleeps out on the streets. Yes, sir. Stand up, please.
Anybody know who I am? You talk about grassroots. My wife is insured in Canada. All her family are insured in Canada. My wife is insured here in the United States, and she has repeatedly said, thank goodness she's in the United States. Everything in Canada is one holy mess, as far as how it goes. Now another thing, back to the grassroots. Senator Sanders, as you go along toward your 90th year, you kind of wish that you had gone to a few more barn dances and so forth, grassroots.
Yes.
But you sound the same as you did when you campaigned in Irisburg, and I'm so glad to hear you here today.
Let me deal with your last point first. And that is what grassroots is.
First of all, do you wish you got more barn dances?
Yes. When you think about, what is important is community. It is knowing the people in your town, is sharing experiences, bond dances, town meetings, and everything else. And I worry very much that as a nation we are moving away from that people are spending their time on computers and watching television rather than going in events in small towns. And this is a problem not only in Vermont, it's a problem all over this country. We're seeing young people leaving rural America, small towns. We're seeing a decline in family-based agriculture. Yeah, it's a serious problem. So how we reestablish those grassroots, I think, is very, very important. In terms of healthcare in Canada, well, I think we probably have a different point of view. The Canadian system is not perfect. Nobody thinks that it is. But what it has accomplished is that anybody, regardless of income, can go to the doctor, can go to the hospital without having to take out their wallet. And I think what polls suggest is that if you ask people in Canada how they feel about their system, not everybody, but most people in Canada feel better about their system than people in the United States feel about our system. Okay. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Dana. I live in Jay. And first thing I want to say is thanks for being here. And you're saving me a phone call.
Okay.
I call your office and say thank you before I run into why my energy is so low these days. I feel like I'm babysitting a circus, watching TV, concerned about the nation, and I have many concerns. I share all of these concerns with you. I have a young son in the military. In 2009, in April, I have a Make-A-Wish daughter, and her wish was to meet President Obama. We walked into that Oval Office, and when I saw 2 Russian spies in that Oval Office not too many months ago, I was incensed. I was outraged. I, as an American who we fly a flag at our house every day, couldn't believe who got elected. My concern is anything able to get done in where you are? Because you have one foot in each of it. I feel like you're here because you do care, and you've been consistent since the 70s, and you've got one foot in the crazy. And I don't see, and my friends don't see anything getting done. But if I had more energy, here's my concern living in Jay and visiting Newport. We have a hole in Newport that hasn't gotten filled in And that would help rise us all up. We'd have more options.
Yep.
Some of us would be employed more. I have a seriously ill 19-year-old with ongoing medical stuff. I can tell you're chomping at the bit. And I'm without, I don't want to use any poor language to describe the circus that's handling America right now, but that is the best I can say. Is anything getting done?
Yes.
Do you give us hope?
Well, for a start, the overwhelming majority of the American people happen to agree with you. Okay, so that should be hopeful. Second of all, as I mentioned earlier, Trump gave us a terrible, terrible budget, and in a bipartisan way, that budget, which would have cut, as I said, Medicaid by $1 trillion, Medicare by $500 billion, it was thrown away. And this is what happened, all right? Social Security Administration, $480 million. We didn't talk about another issue here, child care. There are many working families in Orleans County can't find affordable, good quality child care. We doubled the child care development block grant program. We put $2 billion more into the Veterans Administration. We began the process of dealing with student debt in a significant way. We put a lot of money into dealing with an opioid crisis, billions of dollars. I was at a town meeting at Burlington High School with a bunch of kids there. Man, we are losing a lot of people in Vermont to opioid addiction and overdoses. This is a national crisis. We're going to address that. We put money into rural economic development, i.e., hopefully the money will filter down to Newport and deal with, your terrible issue here with the home. So, that bill was in fact the strongest piece of domestic legislation passed in the last 7 or 8 years. You didn't hear a whole lot about it, but that's the truth. I don't have to tell you, depending on your political views, and I'm sure in this room there are people who hold different political views. But I am not unoptimistic that the future is with our point of view. People want to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. People want to guarantee health care to all people as a right. People want to substantially lower prescription drug costs and take on the pharmaceutical issue. People believe that women are entitled to the same rights as men. People believe that we should make public colleges and universities tuition free. People believe that instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires and large corporations, we should ask them to start paying their fair share of taxes. That's not just my view. That is where the American people are. But we've got to deal with issues like campaign finance. We've got to have a government that begins to reflect that issue. I am not unoptimistic. I'll tell you something else where I am optimistic. I am seeing young people all across this country and in this state becoming involved. And that is very, very important. Young people are fighting for their lives. They're fighting for the future of this country. And they're doing some really good work. So no, I am not. Look, I have to deal with a lot in Washington. And that's the way it is. That's what you pay me to do. But I am not unoptimistic about the future of this country. And I hope that you will not become pessimistic. Okay, other questions? Ma'am?
My name is Gail Gibson. I live in West Glover. I'm a registered nurse. I've been a nurse for over 50 years, so I do have some opinions about some of the things that you're talking about. What you talked about, the pharmacy and the insurances, I'd like to add one more, medical equipment to that. And I hope that's being looked into. Just a real simple thing, my brother, who's 65, had a gallbladder out recently. He was only in overnight, which is unusual, but he wasn't operated on until later in the day. Cost $185,000. That's what his bill was.
Say that again?
$185,000 for a simple gallbladder. Down in Key West.
Is that really accurate?
But not in our state. This is down in Florida. I'm serious.
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, medical equipment is an unknown kind of, to the average person, expense, but it's huge. I worked in an operating room for 40-some years, so I worked around that equipment, and the prices that hospitals have to pay for the equipment is ridiculous, much less what they charge the people beyond that. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was, I don't know if you hear about this at all. Is there any talk about including
for us seniors, who we get worn out now at the end of life, our bodies are just wearing out, which includes our eyes, our teeth, and our ears. And we have to pay for this all separately. Is there any chance of
Well,
this?
Gail, you came to the right guy. Because when I talk, in terms of Medicare, Medicare is now the most popular healthcare program in America. People like it. But Medicare is far from perfect in terms of exactly what Gail said. All right? A lot of seniors have dental problems, need dentures. It's an expensive proposition. Does Medicare cover that? No. People need glasses or they need, issues with their eyes. Medicare cover that? No. The legislation that I've offered, which we call Medicare for All, will continue Medicare for seniors and expand it to cover those areas. Exactly put in there for that reason. Okay, I think there's a gentleman in the back, sir, you got a question?
Yes.
Be loud if you could, please.
My name is Haven Haynes. I'm a selectman in the town of Canaan. We very rarely see any of our state or federal
Yeah, I got up there once in a while for the Moose Festival.
One thing we had recently on Fox, on the Vermont Fox channel, they did an interview about the NEK-TV program in Canaan, Vermont. They never talked to any of the town officers at all. They had a complaint. They ran the complaint. They tried to get a hold of people with NEK-TV, and they couldn't get a hold of them. But they didn't talk to us, and they painted the town, gave us a real black eye, saying that we lost all our industry when East Mountain's still operating there. But I mean, these news agencies should be held responsible for accurately reporting the news instead of making up facts. And
I'm sorry, your first name is what?
Haven.
Haven, if you wanted to follow me around for a few weeks and see about media coverage, you really see something. All right, here's the issue. Let me just speak to that. We have a First Amendment, and I will die to defend the First Amendment. That means you and media and anybody else have a right to say what they want to say and interpret events the way they interpret it. And a lot of the writers are honest. Look, everybody makes a mistake, but I do not agree with the president that everything is fake news, that media is lying all over them. That is absolutely not the case. But they're going to make mistakes like anybody else, and I would hope that when media makes mistakes, they will allow people to correct the record and in one way or another say we made a mistake, which often is the case. My concern about media, and I wrote a book in the last chapter dealt just with this issue, is media talks about a lot of things, but they often don't talk about the most important issues facing the American people. So every day there'll be all kinds of stories about who Trump fired in the White House, but not everybody is staying up nights worrying about who Trump fired in the White House. What people are worrying about is how they're going to afford health care, whether their kids are going to get a good education, whether you can live on $12,000 a year Social Security, how much you're paying in taxes. There's a lot of issues that impact working people that just do not get the kind of coverage that I think that deserves. So in terms of media, hey, follow me around for a few weeks, and you will share some of my frustrations. Okay, a couple more questions. Yes, ma'am.
Jane Edwards, and I would like to ask your thoughts about the Farm Bill and what's going to happen with SNAP funding and SNAP education. I did hear that SNAP education was going to be completely cut.
Again, the president and the Republican leadership supported a massive tax breaks for the wealthiest people and large corporations, and the way they want to pay for that is cutting back on programs that are terribly important to working families, including the SNAP food stamp program. There were some proposals there to make devastating cuts in food stamp. We will fight those tooth and nail. At the end of the day, I think we will succeed. But again, this is America. We should not be talking about people in this country going hungry, and in fact, that is true. And in terms of education, yeah, they don't want people to know about programs in general. because then people will take advantage of the programs. Okay, one or two more programs? Yeah, right here.
I admire your optimism with what's going on in the country now. I think a lot of us, less than young people, don't see how it can possibly get better anytime soon. It's like it's getting worse day by day, to the point where pollution is up, military spending is up, stupid parades for an idiot of a president is up, but we're not winning anything. We're just getting sicker and older.
The answer is yes and no. All right. And you cannot confuse, again, I know there are people here probably who like President Trump, and that's fine. I don't. I think he will go down in history as one of the worst presidents, if not the worst that we've ever had. That's my view. I'm speaking for myself. All right, but we cannot confuse, what the president says with what's happening on the ground, all right? And I just mentioned, for example, didn't get a lot of attention. When you double funding for childcare, when you begin to put money into student debt relief, when we expand Social Security Administration, when instead of cutting the LIHEAP program, we got $60 million more into LIHEAP, okay? Those are positive. This is all in opposition to what Trump wanted, okay? But more importantly, the future. You want to hear good future? Look at the polls about young people, what young people think. Young people have a radically different vision of America than Donald Trump has, and young people are the future of this country. There has never been a generation less racist, less sexist, less homophobic than the younger generation. All right? Think about in your lifetime, women. 20 years ago, do you know how many women there were in the United States Senate? There was one, Barbara Mikulski from Maryland. Today there are 23. There are women governors all over this country. All right? There were millions of people who were gay who could not express their sexual orientation. They can now do that without being humiliated. We have made some progress, a long way to go in civil rights in this country. Remember, we did have an African American who was elected president, something that you and I would not have thought possible 25 years ago, correct? All right. All right. Look, I'm not going to tell you that, the President of the United States is moving us in the wrong direction in almost every area. All right? I'm not going to argue with you on that. But you cannot allow yourself to become overly pessimistic, and you cannot dwell in despair, because there are good things happening. I have the fortune of not only going around this state, but going around the country, and I see a lot of beautiful people standing up. I'll give you another example. Dennis mentioned this. All right. A couple of years ago, if we talked about raising the minimum wage to a living wage, people would have laughed at you. Minimum wage now is $7.25 an hour in Washington. No one can live on that. States all over this country, and Vermont will likely move to a $15 minimum wage phased in over a number of years. That means that workers will be able to at least have a bare minimum to exist on. So, I want to overcome your pessimism here. All right, I'm not going to tell you things are great, but we are making progress in some areas. Don't let Trump take that away.
And we have to vote.
It's the other area, right? We have to vote.
We'll get rid of the Koch brothers.
You're not going to get rid of the Koch brothers, but if you establish campaign finance reform, they are not going to be able to contribute unlimited sums of money, and that's really important. Okay, sir.
Ron Horton, Senate candidate for Essex and Orleans. I'd just like to say one thing about the youth in this country. I think in spite of Betsy DeVos, they showed a lot of intelligence on March 24th, and they continue to do so throughout the country. Yeah, and another thing, just on the senior level, and one of the reasons I got into this race was because I looked around when I finally got back to Vermont after 30 years away. I saw so many people losing their houses for $300, $250 worth of tax money that they couldn't afford to pay. What is it on a federal level that we can cap income tax for seniors?
Well, as a matter of fact, I think the legislature, Dennis, you talked about this a little bit, are they trying to, Vermont is one of 4 states in the country which taxes Social Security income, is that right? Correct. So that'll be a start, and I think there are many members of the legislature who want to do away with that. That would be a good start. Okay, maybe one or two more questions. Ma'am?
I'm Mary Butler. I'm a volunteer for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and a few other things. But we see the numbers of suicide, going up rapidly. We have a national effort that says we're working on zero suicide. It's been shown that 90% of people who take their lives have had a diagnosable mental health condition. What do you see happening, and thank you for being here, in the area of mental health to promote the careers to fund mental health, which we so sorely need because we don't have enough?
Mental health is a very, very significant issue. And suicide, you're right, is going up. Opioid addiction is a major problem. Alcoholism is a major problem. And we have to start by asking ourselves why that is. This gentleman here raised the point. He didn't talk about suicide, but in a sense he talked about dances in communities. And I think what's happening all over this country is we're losing our sense of community. And people are suddenly feeling very isolated and alone. And when you're isolated and alone, then bad things happen. And if you don't have money, then you're going to go to alcohol and you're going to go to drugs. And maybe the eventual outcome is suicide. So we have a major mental health crisis in this country. We don't have enough trained psychiatrists or psychologists. And too often those that we have are not in the rural areas of this country where people don't have a lot of money. And that's why I work very hard. One of the good pieces of news out there is we work very hard to expand community health centers all across this country, which do provide mental health counseling based on ability to pay. But the bottom line here is if you have a health care program that guarantees health care to all people as a right, that certainly includes mental health. So we should not be saying that if I broke my leg or I have cancer, oh yes, I'm going to get health care treatment, but if I have a serious neurosis or a psychosis, then I can't get mental health treatment. What we find, and the Veterans Administration has found this, that if people come in and get treatment when they need it, the likelihood of suicide, that complete prevention, will be much less. So to answer your question on what we are working on and making a little bit of progress is to make sure that anybody dealing with a mental health crisis should be able to get the care when they need it, not 6 months from now. And I will give you a story. I remember, and I'm sure it happened more than once, we have people who answer the phones in my office when you call them up. And a woman called up several years ago, and I'm sure it's been replicated since. She called up and she said, I am very worried about my brother. I'm worried what he might do to somebody else or what he might do to himself. The truth is there are thousands of people in every state in this country. We got thousands of people in America who are either suicidal today or they are homicidal. So when you see somebody take out a gun and start mowing down people, that person does not want to live. All right? So we need to make sure that mental health is treated as a disease, and we need to make sure that we get the care that people need regardless of their income and when they need it. All right, let me just, all right, one last question over there.
Thanks for being here, Bernie. I'm Phyllis McCarty. I'm from Holland. I've done a lot of work with the seniors, which I am one of. But anyway, is there any way that you guys down there in Washington can control this guy who thinks he runs the country like a dictator?
Yes.
Phyllis, that is a very good question.
Yes.
You see, Trump raises many, many issues. And again, I'm sure there are people here who will disagree with me. But it is not just his views on the issues. Obviously, I strongly disagree with his effort to throw millions of people off of health care, or to give tax breaks to billionaires, or to not recognize the reality of climate change, or to appoint these terrible administrators. Okay, that is clearly I disagree with him on all those issues. But there's something else where he is playing a role that no other president has played. And that is, he really is an authoritarian type, somebody who believes that he has the power to do what he wants to do, regardless of what the American people or Congress want him to do. All right? So when he attacks the media every day, what he is trying to tell his supporters is, don't believe anything they're telling you. No other president has ever done it. Everybody in politics will argue with the media on this or that issue. But nobody goes around there saying, oh, the media is all fake news. Don't believe. Only believe me. I'm the president. I'm telling you the truth. New York Times, Newport Express, everybody else is lying to you. That's crazy stuff. You've never had a president. You've had presidents who disagreed with judicial decisions. A court decision comes out, president says, I disagree. No one attacks the judiciary in the way that he has attacked the judiciary. So all over the world, one of the great challenges that we face, not only here, certainly in Russia, where there was an effort at the end of the Soviet Union to try to create a democracy. Putin is putting an end to that. You're seeing in Hungary, you're seeing in Poland, movements away from democracy toward authoritarian-style government, and that is happening in America. So I am doing everything that I can, to limit his ability to ignore what Congress or the American people want. But that is a very, very important issue. All right, on that note, let me thank all of you for coming out once again. We've got an 800 number in Burlington. If there's any problems that you have, do not hesitate to give us a ring. And if anybody has any issues now that they would like to talk to our people, just give us. David, raise your hand. Jessica, where are you? Oh, she left. Oh, there she is. Okay. All right, and Sheila is back there. All right, and please go to those people with your name and your phone number. We'll get back to you next week. Thank you all very much. My name is thank you.